Namaste. My name is Amog and welcome to the Amog Astra podcast. So today I have with me two of my friends from Twitter, Karan and Manasa. And we're going to cover a little about how narratives about India are set outside India. So, and for this purpose, I thought of maybe getting two people whom I know from outside India, just to get a perspective. It's not like a detailed study or something, just to get perspective. First, I'd like to request both Karan and Manasa to introduce themselves a little bit, and then maybe we could go ahead with the topic. So, who would like to go first? Manasa.
Okay, so we are going with ladies first, as always. Hi, I'm Manasa Manjunath. I'm originally from Bangalore and I've been in Germany for about 9 years now, a little over 9 years now. I'm an automotive engineer by profession. And like Amok said, this is not an expert opinion, this is just an observation that we are going to be making. Um, and yeah.
I think you should introduce your own podcast as well. I think you're in the podcast called Mimamsa, if I'm right, right?
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for letting me know. I'm bad at this. Yes. So I have a podcast called Mimamsa that I run. I started it during the lockdown. So what I do is I speak to experts about different topics. Some of the topics I've covered so far is work from home, mental health is something I've had three different discussions on, and the latest being a women's health series where we've spoken about infertility. So if you're interested, do check that out. It's called Mimamsa, and it's available on YouTube. And yeah, of course, get in touch with me via Twitter. My handle is Mani Manjunath.
Yeah. Karan?
Yeah, hi. So I'm also an automotive engineer by profession. I did my bachelor's in India and I moved to Germany in 2011. And so we've been here, I think around the same time, 9.5 years. And we've been here also during the UPA time and like through the whole Nirbhaya time
Incident.
and the Devyani Khobragade
Yes.
incidents and then like after Modi took over and since 2014. So I think like we've seen how India's image is projected then here, and I think it's a good perspective that we have and that we could talk about today.
Yeah. So I'm happy actually you mentioned both of those incidents. I'd like to go over them one by one, just a little bit. But I'd like to start with something that, gathered a lot of attention on Twitter a few days ago. So it was a thread that I think Manasa wrote on the kind of, safety precautions with respect to COVID, because now we've been under a kind of slowdown at the very least of all other things for almost 10 months now, and like 11 months. And we had lockdowns, several lockdowns. Some countries still have lockdowns. I think Germany is in a lockdown right now. You're not allowed to go outside. And what we saw was that different countries were progressing differently. Some countries saw two waves. So one wave was, it still affected a lot of people, but then there was a larger second wave, and then people decided to reintroduce the lockdowns and again keep people inside. So what I would like to discuss was what differences did you notice from the kind of precautions that were being taken, say at the airports, because you traveled during the lockdown in the last few months, I think, from Germany to India and again from India back to Germany. So what I would like to know is what differences did you see in the kind of precautions being taken or in the kind of rules or regulations being followed on airports and on other places and everywhere, like the mask safety, mask etiquette, and all the other things. Whoever would like to go.
So I just want to go over the thread that I've already put that you've mentioned. So as a disclaimer, I want to start off with saying that, of course, the thread doesn't say that this is exactly why India is doing well now or why the cases are going down. But I think there has to be something that has to be said for how people exercise precaution at all. Because I think exercising precaution and taking safety measures is a very significant step in helping combat COVID at all. So that was my intention when I put out the thread. We went to Germany. We went from Germany to Bangalore in December last year. So when you have to fly into India, for quite some time now. You've needed first what you need to do is you have to fill out a self declaration form. So you have to log into the Delhi airport website, and there is a self declaration form where you fill out all your details: passport number, your uh, home address where you will be staying once you come, how long are you staying, and why you're visiting, of course, because travel for leisure is not allowed at the moment. So that's the first step. Apart from that, they also expect you to download the Arogya Setu app. So this
Yeah.
is pan India, these two things.
Hmm.
What was also in place when we were when we were planning to travel in December was, if you came in from abroad, you had to do, I think, a 14-day quarantine. But you could cut the quarantine short with a negative COVID test if it was not more than 72 hours old, if I remember right.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, this was not the case for Karnataka.
Hmm.
Karnataka at that point wasn't allowing for shortening of quarantine. I think you had to quarantine at home.
Okay.
Um, but what Karnataka also wanted was two additional apps, which are called Aptamitra app and a quarantine watch app.
Okay.
So this is before you even begin to travel.
Okay.
So before you even board the flight. So then we did all of this stuff. We also did a COVID test. We did a COVID test beforehand because we were going to be quarantining at home, and we wanted to make sure that we were not infected.
Okay.
In step number one. So that's what we did. We had a COVID negative test, which was less than 72 hours old, and we traveled from Stuttgart to Frankfurt.
Okay.
Now, Frankfurt Airport is like the biggest airport in all of Germany. It's the hub for Lufthansa, which means that all of Lufthansa's connecting flights connect in Frankfurt. So we are not talking about a small airport. This is a huge airport.
Hmm.
One of the other things is when you enter into the Frankfurt Airport, they have a testing center in the Frankfurt Airport, which is why you will see a lot of a really long line of people who are either traveling out or, I mean, even just want to take a COVID test. So one of the first things I noticed was that we had quite a way to walk from entering into the airport to going to the terminal that we were at. One of the first things that I noticed was there were not a lot of hand sanitizing stations all
Okay.
along the way. This is a pretty big airport, and you have travelers everywhere, so you would expect hand sanitizers to be everywhere.
Sure.
But that wasn't the case. There were some there, but it was randomly distributed. There was no logic as such that I could see. The second thing was masks were worn, but not by everybody. That I have to add as well.
Okay.
One of the things that surprised me a lot was when we were going to check in, we passed the ticketing counter in one of the terminals. And there was nobody in this ticketing counter that was wearing a mask. And at this point, Germany had just started the second wave. I think this was just in
December.
early December. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So just the day after we traveled, I think, or a couple of days after that, Germany went into lockdown again. So you can see that the number of cases were really increasing. So those were the two things that at first really stood out to me. Apart from that, Frankfurt Airport had all their restaurants were shut down. There were only small bakeries that were open. All the places that serve hot food as such were closed down. Now, when we checked in, the person at the counter, the check-in counter, they checked for the self declaration. They noted down our details. They checked our mobiles to ensure that we had all the apps installed. So that was the first step. And then only after we fulfilled all these steps, we were allowed to board. And this they did for everybody.
Okay.
Now, this was the case in Frankfurt Airport. Now, if you want to ask any questions, or if maybe Karan wants to add something, I'll stop here.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to continue saying that like we had a stopover in Dubai, and in Dubai also they like noted down all our details and checked all the stuff again before boarding onto the next flight. And once we reached Bangalore, though, there was like it was completely different. Once we like as soon as we exit the flight, there were people standing there telling us, "Okay, maintain distance, form two lines." And then when we walk towards the towards the exit, and then they had like these setups there with infrared cameras, and they were like monitoring everyone's temperature.
Temperatures. Yeah.
Yeah, and then they had like different stations. So after your temperature is monitored, then you go, they check your blood oxygen levels. They note it down on your self-declaration forms. And then again they check if you have all the apps and stuff. So and at every station there is a hand sanitizing. There was hand sanitizer as well. So everyone sanitizes their hand and then they do all the checks. And
Yeah.
then finally, once we came out of the airport, there was this final check at the exit, and then and then this lady tells us, okay, how long you have to quarantine for. So she
Mhm.
told us, okay, we are all asymptomatic. We have the negative test, corona PCR test. So she said you can just quarantine for 7 days at home.
Okay.
And yeah, that's what we did. And after 7 days, we were free to move out. But like, and then in India, like after that, when we were going out, we noticed that in every store, like when you had to enter every store, they had hand sanitizers. Everyone had to wear masks when you were going outside.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, some people wear it below their nose or some people wear it on their chin, but that is the same here as well. I mean, in
Mhm.
Germany as well, there's no difference. Like people at the end of the day are humans, I feel. Uh, but like there, Germany, it was open since June
Okay.
actually over here.
Mhm.
And in June, like they had opened all restaurants, all stores again, and they were very lax about the regulations. There was no hand sanitizer, no one bothered, anyone could come in, go out. And I think that is why they had this bigger second wave now.
Yeah, I
Again,
mean,
people were going out on holidays and stuff.
yeah, I kind of wanted to know that as well, because since you both work in Germany, I mean, in the automotive sector, is it really feasible for you people, particularly to work from home at all times? Or, I mean, you must have had times that you had to go to the office and things, but it was open since June, right?
Yeah, so yeah, you can go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry. Yeah. So at least in my case, I work a job where I can do mostly work from home.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so in my case, I have been in home in working from home since I think the beginning of March last year,
Okay.
and I have gone to office. I think after that, a handful of times. I would say, like not more than 10 times at all. But I think what was done and what was good is a lot of companies actually made it possible for the people to work from home. So
Yeah.
you had the companies made it possible in the sense that you could take any equipment that you needed, monitors and stuff like that, and they
Mm-hmm.
did allow for work from home. That is, I think, a very significant step. Even before the governments stepped in with any kinds of rules and regulations, in Germany itself, what we did see was, for me at least, from the company side, we had a lot of emails, a lot of information coming in from our bosses saying that try to work from home as much as possible. And I think that did help in Germany, like being having the option to work from home.
Mm-hmm.
And being given that permission from your higher ups to work from home, I think it's a very significant step. Of course, there are people, I know people at work itself who don't have the same possibility as
Luxury,
me,
maybe.
or luxury as me, exactly. People who work hands on with the car, for example, people who do testing and applications, they do
Mm-hmm.
have to go into work. But even there were very significant precautions in place, and I think this holds true for every company, or most companies here in Germany at least, when I
Mm-hmm.
say that if you went into work, there were protocols in place. You had to wear a mask, or you had to maintain so much distance.
Mm-hmm.
I do know for a fact that the number of people allowed into meeting rooms was significantly reduced, so that
Yeah.
you limit the amount of interaction that you have with people, you limit the amount of contact you have with people. So I think for me that was a very significant step that companies individually took. Because
Mm-hmm.
uh, Germany, because of its history, you can't make anything mandatory, but you can definitely tell people that it is, so they say empfohlen here, or it's like
It's
it
an
is advised.
advisory. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So, so so it's up to the people at the end of the day how seriously they take the advisory. So
Mm-hmm.
that is the
Yeah.
thing. So they leave it up to the people.
Okay.
uh, but I think I'll let Karan jump in on his
Yeah, so
experience.
the thing is, here they're very touchy when it comes to orders from the government. So
Okay.
so the government issues advisories, and
Mm-hmm.
you are free to follow it or not.
Okay.
Like apart from the mask thing, again there was a lot of hoo-ha about it, where you had to compulsorily wear a mask in public transport.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, there were some demonstrations against it, but Yeah, I mean the government went ahead with it. But like I said, like even in June when everything was open, you were required to wear masks only when you enter the store. So people
Okay.
were roaming around outside on the streets. It was all jam packed. No one was wearing masks, and suddenly they just put it on and enter the store, which is yeah kind of ridiculous. But okay, something's better than nothing, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, coming back to my job, like I do testing on the cars. So for me
Mm-hmm.
in the beginning, it was a little difficult for work from home.
Mm-hmm.
But luckily, our project was in such a phase where we didn't have to do so many tests. Now,
Mm-hmm.
since like December, again, I've had to do some more testing,
Mm-hmm.
and I just went to Sweden and came back.
Yeah.
So that was again also an interesting trip with the COVID protocols because there was
Yeah.
absolutely nothing. There was absolutely nothing.
Yeah, that was this big point about Sweden that they didn't do anything at all. Just carry on
Anything.
as business as usual.
Yeah. Yeah. So the company required us to have a corona negative test when
Mm-hmm.
we fly out and fly back in.
Yeah.
But Sweden they didn't bother, like, and we were wearing masks and walking around everywhere. But the people then look at us weirdly, like, "Hey, what is wrong with these people? Why are they wearing masks?"
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's so different. And the same thing when we came back to Germany from India as well.
Mm-hmm.
There was no checks, no temperature check, no hand sanitizers. Like we were supposed to do a registration before we fly in.
Mm-hmm.
Even that wasn't checked for me. Like for random people, they were checking if they have done it, but
Okay.
for me, they didn't check. So I could have just flown into Germany and then roamed around as I wanted. Like even the quarantine was just voluntary, up to me if I wanted to or not.
Yeah. And this
Yeah,
was in January, right?
this
This
was
was
in January.
3 weeks ago, yeah, in
Oh, wow.
January.
I mean,
I
you were
just want
still.
to,
I'm sorry. Yeah,
sorry.
please.
I just wanted to jump in and I wanted to add that when Karan went to Sweden, I think the day before that or 2 days before that, the Swedish government, they, I think, enacted some new laws which allowed them to then close down businesses to make sure that they were in sort of a lockdown. That
Mm-hmm.
was the one thing I wanted to add. And the second thing I wanted to add is the day before we flew back, no, I think a couple of days after we flew into Germany, they then started requiring a negative COVID test
Okay.
Yeah,
minimum with minimum 72 not older than 72
48
hours
hours.
or
Mm-hmm.
no or you have
No,
to
the
take
thing
a
is, no, that is what's very funny about this. They want you to either have a negative COVID test when you fly in
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
or 48 hours after you fly in. So they still don't mandatorily require the COVID test.
And are there any protocols set in place for contact tracing then in that case?
You
No
have
idea.
you have an app that you can download if you want to and in the app you can also upload the results of your test, but all of
Mhm.
this is again voluntary. If you want you
Okay.
can download it, if you want you can put
Yeah,
in
but
that you've had a test.
the app doesn't help in contact tracing. It
No.
is just for yourself to know if you have come into contact with anyone who has had COVID. So what
Yeah.
happens is if I do a test and I upload it onto the app saying that I've been tested positive. So
Mm-hmm.
anyone who has been in contact with that person gets a notification on their app.
Okay, okay.
So
So I
that
think
is the only
that
thing.
feature is present in Arogya Setu also, I think, right? So it
Yeah.
lets you know how many people close to you in what radius have tested positive for COVID and things like that. Yeah. And about this, I mean, the thing about how many companies have what protocols in place, it's that we observe at least in our place. So I work in Hyderabad now. I work in an electronics company. So we've seen that the number of people on location has drastically decreased. It's below 50% now. So I mean that it actually varies team to team. So it's like it's not uniform in all places, in all companies, in all teams. So it's that most people have again, most companies have given the option to work from home, but it's not for everyone. For some teams, it's work from home, and they've again facilitated people to work from home. Like they'll allow us to buy monitors and tables and chairs and everything to kind of help us increase efficiency while working at home and whatnot. And then
Mhm.
one more thing that they've kept in mind while again calling people back, like we were called back in September sometime. So what they kept in mind regarding that was that there should be enough distance, again, like 6 feet distance and all of that, even when we work in the company. So they only allowed us to sit in alternate cubicles and things like that. And then again, the masks have to be there, and hand sanitizers are placed everywhere else. And there is also this temperature sensing that happens. I mean, temperature, they take temperature every day via those infrared cameras once when we enter the company. And even before that, we have to answer a questionnaire every day, and we show them that this is the case. And recently they also added one more feature, that we had to also install another app. I think there are some apps which they basically allow the companies to monitor where we are. So I think it works on Bluetooth or something. And then again, there's an alert if someone is too close to someone else for more than 15 minutes, then it like buzzes, and then we have to move around, and then they do things like that. So companies here have been a little careful. But again, this is just what I've seen in certain companies where my friends work, where I work in Hyderabad, Bangalore, areas like that. But when we go on the streets, it's a completely different story. Most people, they don't even care. Again, they wear the masks as if they are tokens, and they're not even covering their noses and the mouths, and sometimes it's just around their chin. But yeah, I mean, in the initial stages of lockdown, we saw a lot of compliance with respect to masks and sanitizers and all of those things. But it sort of has faded away again. So there's that one thing. And I mean, did you guys notice these things in your place as well? That it how I mean, because you guys had a clear cut second wave of COVID, and the response to the first wave of COVID and the response to the second wave of COVID, was there any market difference that people showed, or at least governments showed, that they learned something from the first wave and how much damage it did, and then use that knowledge for the second wave again, or did you just see a completely different story?
So, like Karan said, that they opened up here in around June. Like
Okay.
after the first wave, when the number of cases started going down, we
Mm-hmm.
opened in June, and after June, it was successively opened up. So initially,
Okay.
they opened up only, I think, uh,
Stores,
stores and stuff
normal
like that,
retail stores. Yeah.
retail stores. But retail stores at that time were like really monitoring how many people they were letting in. They had hand sanitizers outside and stuff like that. But there was
No,
nobody who was like,
that was before. That was in March, April. From June, they opened completely. They even opened restaurants in June, like even for dine-in, they opened in June.
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Because Germany never had a complete lockdown like how we had in India. So there were stores still open, like
No, no,
throughout.
no. I want to correct you here. The retail stores were closed. The
Okay.
retail stores were, I remember this because I needed to get running shoes. I need to
Okay.
get running shoes, and the stores were all closed. And after they
Okay.
opened, we had
Yeah,
to
but
take an
that was for
appointment.
like very, very short time. That was for like 1 or 2 weeks only. It wasn't
No,
too
no,
long.
this was. I still remember. I went and bought my shoes in June.
Okay. Yeah,
All right.
probably possible.
Because
Yeah.
it was after June that they started to open up, but initially the stores were more careful. They would let you in only with a certain number of people. They controlled it by giving you baskets. So every customer who entered, they had a basket, and they had limited number of baskets. So that's how a lot of stores controlled how many people were entering and leaving. But this
Mm-hmm.
was very, very initially. Gradually, they started opening up. They started opening up museums. They started opening up zoos, etc. And I think by the time the summer holiday started here, which is in July, mid July, end of July, it was completely open. Restaurants were open, stores were open. There was nothing to point to the fact that there is COVID. You
Other
still
than the
need,
masks in the
other than
public
the masks
transport.
in the public transport and in supermarkets.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, there was no monitoring as such. I've never tried to see what will happen if you don't wear a mask in public transport. And I have seen that mostly in public transport, people do wear masks. And at this point, I also want to add that Germany counted anything that covers the face and the mouth as a mask. So you
Okay.
could have a shawl, you could have, I don't know, like a muffler, anything. You could just hold a piece of cloth like this and go in. That counted
Yeah,
as
you
well at
could
this.
just put your shirt up as well and just cover your nose and mouth. So it was counted as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was counted as well. So that was initially, and like Karan said, summer was, everybody was traveling. They went out of the country. There was nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And once summer was done, and then we started seeing the second wave, I think around November. November
Hmm.
is when they started talking about restrictions again, and we
Hmm.
had new restrictions or a lockdown coming in in December.
Okay.
And we are still in this lockdown. So Germany is still in lockdown. All schools are
Yeah,
closed.
but you should use lockdown little carefully because the stores are all open.
Yes, yeah, I have to add
So
that.
this is like much more relaxed than the initial lockdown. So we have a curfew that we have
Hmm.
to be back home by 8 o'clock.
Okay.
But apart from that, like everything is still open.
Yeah. So again, you have night curfews, but people still can roam
Yeah.
out during the day. I mean,
Yeah. During the day, you can still walk around without a mask in public. Only like in transport, when you enter a bus, you have to wear a mask, or when you stand at the bus stop. But like if you're just walking around in the park or like on the streets, you don't need a mask.
Yeah. Of course, we have to add that there is no dine-in available. All dine-in
Yeah.
no.
is closed, and I think
Okay.
retail
Yeah.
stores are also closed. You can't go into retail stores. It's only supermarkets, stores that sell necessities, so food,
Okay.
and pharmacies, stuff like that is open.
Hmm.
Not clothes stores and stuff. All that is
Yeah.
closed. Schools are also closed. Advisory is to work from home as much as possible, and
Hmm.
this will go on until the 14th of February. And
Okay.
there is a review scheduled with all the states ministers, I think next week.
Okay. Okay. So,
Uh,
I mean, there's still a lot. I mean, but again, about this curfew thing. I mean, you have a lockdown, but it's not exactly a lockdown. Like if you can still go out during the day and just have to stay at home at night. I mean, you can hardly call it a lockdown if you look at the way it is done. I mean, and I've never been able to understand this logic that you can go out during the day and then just sit at home at night. And in India too, we had like completely different situation. I think in Maharashtra, so I'm from Maharashtra, but I've not lived in Maharashtra for the past few months. I'm in Hyderabad. So the thing is, if I remember correctly, it was that you had to stay at home on Saturdays and Sundays, and during the week you could go out, something like that. I never understood the logic behind this. I
yeah.
mean, if you're going to office on weekdays, then this just making people stay at home on weekends is just cruel. Or I mean, cruel. I'm saying if they know what they're doing, and if they don't know what they're doing, is just stupid.
It is very ridiculous because even what happened here when they initially opened up is I think they also had limited the store hours, which
Mm-hmm.
made zero sense to me because I thought people still need to buy stuff from that store. You're now limiting the amount of time the store is open, which means that more people will go in during this time. So aren't you technically driving up the number of contacts that
Yeah.
you have? Instead, it makes more sense to relax the hours so that people
Mhm.
can go in at different times.
Yeah.
But I think logic has never been the strong point when they come up with policies like this. At least
And
in
I
my
think
experience,
that is not country specific. I
Yeah.
think
It's
it
a
is
universal.
across
it's
countries.
universal. Yeah.
Universal, they have like weird logic when it comes to the COVID regulations.
Yeah. And I mean, now I just want to ask this: that how carefully have you been keeping track of the situation? I mean, how many numbers? I mean, numbers like how many people are infected, how many deaths are there, and whatnot. I mean, have you guys been keeping a track at all? At least in the beginning? No.
In the beginning, yeah. In the beginning, because it was kind of, I mean, in the beginning, you also didn't know what COVID is. Like
Yeah.
there were emails coming in every day, which was like, if you have this symptom, you could have COVID. And then a week later, it was something else was added into it. And I
Mm-hmm.
think there was so much I think there was so much uncertainty
Yeah.
is the word
Yeah.
I'd use.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't know what was happening, so there was a need to constantly like sit and monitor, like, oh, today there's 10 cases more, or 20 cases more, or 1,000 cases more,
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of like drove someone in. It can drive you insane, like keeping that kind of count. And I will confess that I used to when I had to go to the grocery store, I would wear gloves and go. Like I used to
Oh.
wear gloves and go. I would use the
Mm-hmm.
hand sanitizer. I still do avoid people like on the road or even in the grocery store. If I see somebody coming at me, I will move away. I
Yeah.
still do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think after June, I stopped like going after the numbers because
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think at a certain point, the numbers stop making sense. Once it
Yeah.
exceeds a certain amount, it's
Mm-hmm.
beyond my comprehension. Like I can't imagine 50,000 people. So anything, I think Like when you say 50,000 people, 1 million
It
people, 2
becomes
million
just
people.
statistics then.
Exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
10 people, you can say, okay, 10 people, a family has COVID, but suddenly when you say, okay, 50,000 people in your city have COVID, it's like a statistic and it's like hard to grasp.
Yeah.
And then at some point, like you can't just sit and look at the numbers all the day. Like for me, initially work from home, I was just looking at the COVID numbers in Germany, COVID numbers in India, and I was
Mhm.
watching like daily health updates from both
Mm.
countries.
Yeah.
And actually, my productivity also went down, like from work productivity went down to like probably 20%.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, I
But
remember this this
yeah,
this stage very carefully because initially, me and few of my friends, we used to look at these numbers once a day and we used to discuss like what is going to happen because we were sent home from our campus. So I was still in college. So we were sent home in March, some third week of March. But then after that, when I think a month later or something, when China numbers from China stopped at 80,000, 83,000, something like that. I just lost it. I mean, it's just not possible one way or the other. That was what I was thinking. It may very well be possible. I don't know. But the thing is, I couldn't square it. So how can China stop it at 83,000 and not one single case after that? They opened up the province where it started. And I mean, they were issuing out videos of like people enjoying in water parks and things like that. So
yeah,
that was in Wuhan, right? And that amazed me. I mean, if this is the case, then why would we even worry so much? Of course, I still followed all the protocols. I still do, but the thing is, then I stopped worrying because I knew nothing was going to happen if we are careful enough and all of these things. And beyond a point, we can't even. I mean, it's not in our control beyond a point. We can do all that
yeah.
we can do, but after that, if everything is happening in this particular way, then we can't do anything. And why I asked you this specifically is that in the beginning, if you people remember, there's this bunch of people who predicted that India will see something like 350 million deaths because of, or no, or at least cases because of
Yeah.
COVID. That's like one fourth of India's population. And why I'm raking this up, it is because if you see, we won't compare per capita because India is just too huge a country for any per capita, comparison. But the thing is, we still have managed to keep the COVID threat down to a reasonable level. We've still lost a lot of people. Even one life lost is more than anything. But the thing is, we've been able to manage it quite well. But we still seem to see people, I mean, media outlets from outside, or just say general people from outside, they don't have a very good idea of what, I mean, India has done in all of these situations. Now they're starting to appreciate because of all of these things that we call quote unquote vaccine diplomacy. But now they're only now starting to recognize that India has also done a very good job of this. And I think Manasa's thread on that was a very important factor. But do you think, with your interactions with people in other countries like Germany and Sweden, Karan has been to Sweden. So do you think, in your interactions with people, uh, what exactly do people think that India has managed to do with respect to COVID, or is it like something that doesn't matter to a lot of people? It's just that people are dying everywhere, so we don't care.
So I'll go ahead first. So
Okay.
with my interaction with my colleagues, at least what they like, first of all, India doesn't feature so much in the national news and stuff over here.
Okay.
And so like everyone expected, like in the beginning, because of our population density and the
Hmm.
people and the sheer number of people, that we would see a lot more deaths, that we would see like millions of deaths probably. Because
Hmm.
compared to like per capita, how the deaths were in other European countries, that is what they naturally extrapolated for India, and that is what they predicted.
Yeah.
But then now when I tell my colleagues, like after we came back from India and I talk to my colleagues and I tell them, yeah, I mean, it's not a big deal. Like it's under control now in India. Like everyone's back to living their lives and they are in the second lockdown and shutdown. They like somehow can't believe it.
Yeah.
And they like, okay, probably the government is hiding the numbers. And I'm like, okay, even if the government is hiding the numbers, then the dead bodies should start piling up at some point. Like you can't hide millions of dead bodies.
True.
So then they're like, yeah, okay, that makes sense as well. So like somehow we don't have a clue like what is happening. But there is definitely something that India has done correct.
Yeah.
But the thing is, no one has bothered to like do a study on this or like to do actual research to find out
Hmm.
what is going on. And even like recently, this article that was written that I read on Twitter, They call it like a miracle of some sort.
Yeah, I mean, they're not ready to acknowledge that this was because of efforts. They just think that we got
Yeah,
lucky.
exactly. But then when the same thing when New Zealand declared that okay, we don't have any COVID anymore, they were all praised for
So many.
the prime minister over there. Yeah, and she was like the next hero of the world.
Yeah.
But then when it comes to India and how we've handled it, neither our prime minister nor our chief ministers or anyone gets
Hmm.
any credit. It's just a miracle.
I agree with Karan. I think in general, India doesn't feature so much in the national news here.
Hmm.
You do hear a lot about how America is doing because I think that is the nearest comparison they do. They do America and they compare to Great Britain. So
Yeah.
that is about it.
Hmm.
I think it also, I don't know, maybe economically or maybe because it's the West, that could be one of the reasons why India doesn't feature so much. When you hear all the negative stuff.
Yeah.
Uh, so initially, even here, when the pandemic started, and I think the biggest news I heard about India was that, oh, India is going into lockdown. So that was one big piece of news here that, oh, a country of 1.3 billion is going to go into severe lockdown. That was one piece of news that I did read in the German news. And
Hmm.
when the migrant situation that
Yeah.
also did come up in the news here. And I think the third piece of news was that we were starting to come out of lockdown. So these were the
Hmm.
three things that came up.
Hmm.
And of course, what you just mentioned that they kind of extrapolated, I think, the data they were getting from America to
Hmm.
India to tell that we will see these many deaths and these many cases. And I think when it comes to handling, you have to give it to our government. They have whatever they have done, it has worked because I have heard a lot of personal stories. Like, let's not go by just media reports. I've also heard very many personal stories, and this comes from Karnataka. I have had relatives who moved from one city in Karnataka to another city in Karnataka, and when they did that, the police came to their house, put the seals on them that they have come from a different state, from a different city,
City.
and they locked down their house. So they sealed the house. They couldn't go out of the house. And they
Okay.
did tell them that if you need anything, any kind of groceries, food, anything, you can come and pick. Like we will come and give it to you. And even other than that, I think one of the most important things is when you talk about lockdown or quarantine. I think one thing which becomes very important is if you're staying at home, if you're not
Hmm.
allowed to go out of your house,
Hmm.
how do you get supplies in? Because
Yeah.
you have to eat,
True.
and there is only so much stuff you can hoard, at least perishables, which will go bad after, like, let's say even 1 week, if you say.
Hmm.
uh, and I think this is where it becomes very important to also see how easy is it to quarantine at home, or
True.
how
Yeah.
easy is it to stay in lockdown inside the house. And
Hmm.
I think uh, this is again easier in India than it is here. Like, I had a relative who had COVID, and
Okay.
they were recovering at home. They had a small stint in the hospital and they came back home, and
Okay.
they were at home. But it was so convenient for them to have food brought in. So there was a delivery service in Bangalore which was catering particularly to COVID patients. So
Okay.
they would have food delivered. They would just have to empty the tiffin into their dabbas and keep the tiffin out, and they didn't even have to wash nothing.
Got
Very,
it.
very convenient and not very expensive either. So
Hmm.
compare that to when we came here. So we have no relatives, we have no friends staying close by here. And
Hmm.
especially with the restrictions in place, you can't go out after 8 o'clock, and we couldn't go out because we were technically in quarantine.
Hmm.
So we got in touch with the local health authorities and we asked, yeah, so what do we do for food? And she's like, oh, don't you have like relatives or friends here close by? No. Then she's like, oh, okay, then I have really no idea what you can do.
Oh my God. Then, how did you guys manage then?
So we were
Yeah,
lucky enough that in the airport you can buy groceries. So we
Hmm.
made sure to stock up. Like when we left, we bought everything in the airport grocery store, and we came home and then we managed.
Hmm.
Um,
yeah. The thing is, like, we suspected that this would happen because
Hmm.
we've been trying. Like, there is just one supermarket that does deliveries, home
Okay.
delivery.
Hmm.
And that, like, we've been trying for 2, 3 weeks. We never got a delivery slot available. So
Okay.
we kind of suspected this would happen. So, like, when we came out of the airport, we saw that there was a supermarket open. We immediately went there and bought like some supplies and we came. And then I called the local health authority here and she's like, yeah, I don't know, then maybe you should go and buy supplies for yourself. So that's the thing, no? So it's so difficult to quarantine here, and it's like
Hmm.
it's completely different in India. In India, you have like the vegetable wala come on his cart. He rings
Yeah,
the bell and he asks, "Okay, what vegetables do you want today?" Or the milkman comes and brings it home. It's so easy to quarantine,
yeah,
and it's just that one point of contact where you have to like make sure you sanitize your hands or whatever. And that is what we did at home. Okay, you get your vegetables, go wash them immediately, wash your hands, and then
hmm,
it's done. But in
yeah,
Germany, it's so difficult. Everyone has to go to the market.
yeah.
And I want to jump in here and add, there is of course the possibility to have food delivered. Like you can order
Mm.
from restaurants, that is still there here.
Okay.
But if you want to have like this tiffin, like home cooked meal or whatever, that kind of a thing, it is quite
Mm.
expensive. It is
Yeah.
not as affordable as it is in India. And the
Mm.
second thing I wanted to add is, in Germany, all supermarkets are also closed on Sundays.
Yeah,
So like usually or just during those lockdowns?
usually.
Normally, even otherwise, like Sundays,
Oh,
everything is closed.
okay, okay.
Yeah, and
That's a
even
different
during
challenge.
the lockdown, they like continued this one on Sundays. So
Mm.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I had this particular question like about I initially asked, that I mean, how is India being portrayed? At least how the situation in India is being observed by people who wouldn't usually care. So this is, I mean, and Manasa very clearly stated that it is whenever it is India that is being talked about, it's usually negative. No, I mean, a lot of us have had this question for a long time, and we've never understood why India's coverage is, I mean, mostly negative, and it hasn't changed much. Even if you see, like in UPA during Manmohan Singh's time, it was the same image. Now it is kind of a different image, but it's still a different negative image. Now we are too authoritarian, and we are quite again, uh, you know, oppressive in a way to the minorities and all of these things. Now, there's a reason I asked this. It is because everyone started getting serious about COVID everywhere, and then suddenly in USA we had these George Floyd protests, and COVID kind of disappeared as in only from people's memories. No, it was still there, but people are still protesting. And apparently, it was a virtue to sit at home or to quarantine or whatever because of COVID before the protests. But then after the protests, if you didn't participate in the protests, you were a bad person.
yeah,
So it kind of comes and goes from people's memories. And again, in India also, we see the same things. Like again, there are like it's not like protests only happened in USA. There were protests happening in India for quite some time at that point also. So like, from December 2019, we had those CAA protests, correct? And then they were squatting on that Shaheen Bagh and all of that. We all know what happened for a long time. So 100 odd days people are sitting there. But then they only vacated after the COVID threat came. So they were vacated because of COVID, not because Indian government was, authoritarian or they made them go away. It was not because of that. But still, the coverage that anyone outside India would see is that India was oppressing its minorities when the bills were not even talking about it. And another thing again, now these protests with respect to these farm bills. So I mean, I have done a discussion with a lawyer before, and before any of these protests took this ugly shape, I had done it with a it was very dispassionate discussion about just what the laws said, all the three laws said, and we kind of just discussed uh, what options farmers will have and all of those things. But now that we saw what we saw on 26th, that was again, I mean, I'm sure it had some very colorful coverage outside of India. And what I would like to know from you guys is briefly is, I mean, all of these protests that we see inside India, right from CA and all of these things, how exactly are narratives built with respect to this? Because again, this is what I wanted this conversation to be like. So earlier it was about we discussed about COVID. Now what I wanted to know was about these protests. How exactly are these protests being portrayed in media outside of India? Because we know about foreign media is the media in US. We know what New York Times says, we know what Washington Post says, but we don't know about other countries. So what I wanted to know was, how are these protests being portrayed in, say, German media?
So in German media, one thing I want to like say from the outset is whenever they talk about BJP or Modi, they
Mm-hmm.
always add a caveat that he's a right-wing Hindu nationalist leader. He's a leader of a right-wing Hindu nationalist party. This is
Mm-hmm.
there in every report.
Okay.
And you know how when you say a right-wing nationalist, what image
Mhm.
it portrays in Germany. Like immediately
Yes.
they associate it with the Nazism.
Correct.
And I have a feeling that this is done deliberately because
Mhm.
I don't know. Like to me, I have not seen any Nazi tendencies from the BJP till now. Could be my bias, I don't know, but
Mhm.
this is definitely done deliberately. And
Mm.
I should also add that a lot of their information that they get is from the English language media in India.
Yeah. Yeah.
So basically what they do is their sources are English language media, and they basically translate it
Mhm.
to German. So a lot of bias that we see here is also because of the bias in the English language media. And by media, I am referring specifically to newspapers.
Okay. Okay.
Because like in TV media, yeah, we do have both sides. We have like the Times Now, Mirror Now,
Dynamic. Yeah. Yeah.
strat dynamic that happens there. But like newspaper reports is generally from like online news portals or newspapers, what they get.
Mm.
And it's basically copied over. And whatever narrative you see in the English language news, it is
Mm.
the same narrative that is there here as well.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, Mani, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. This is like that Narendra Modi is the prime minister of, and he comes from a right wing Hindu nationalist party, something which is there in every newspaper. It is like the first thing that comes, and then everything follows that. I think
Yeah,
that is the
that's like
biggest.
setting the tone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's like the
It's
biggest
like
piece
giving
of
a
news.
character background. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the biggest piece of news, and everything else is like, okay, we'll derive from this what we want
Yeah.
to derive.
Mhm.
And like Karan said, that there is a certain history and there is a certain image associated with right wing nationalism here in Germany.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
especially significant because Germany has seen a revival, so to say, of
Okay.
right wing nationalism in the last couple of years. So I think anybody who's read about German politics in the recent years will know that there is a party called Alternative für Deutschland. It means alternative for Germany. And this is a right wing nationalist party. And for the first time, they have got seats in the German parliament.
Mhm.
So, because of this, in the last few years, there is renewed interest. There is renewed interest into right-wing nationalism,
Okay.
and we've seen this interest across the world. It was there even in America when Trump was there, and of course, it's there in India.
Mhm.
Because we have BJP in power, and
Correct.
there is this tendency to compare Modi to Trump. For what reason, I can never fathom, but it is there. But I think, like Karan said, that one of the reasons is that there is everything that all the news about India here is translated from English language news. So
Mhm.
because of that, there is that bias, and I think the second bias comes in because there is no understanding of India. Like I
Okay.
think it's very easy to peddle a certain kind of narrative when you have a good enough background for it. And that
Mhm.
is what you see in Germany, or maybe even generally in Europe, I would say. If
Okay.
you speak to the people, they have so little understanding for what is India. Like they have no, they can't even fathom the fact that we have 1.3 billion people. They can't fathom the fact that, like a lot of people will ask, do you speak Indian to me? Like
Oh.
in 2020, if you're
Yeah.
asking me, do you speak Indian? I don't know if I should get angry or if I should laugh at you. Like, you know, it's so, how do you say, blinkered somehow, this kind
Yeah.
of idea that they have of India.
Mhm.
So, first of all, it's difficult for them to understand what India is. They can't understand our diversity, whether in terms of language, culture, or even religion.
Mhm.
Second thing is, I think one of the reasons is because Germany is a very homogeneous country. It is a very
Yeah.
Christian country. So you can understand why these people have difficulty wrapping their head around something like India.
Mhm.
And then there are also, again, like everything that they have know about India, it reinforces this idea that they have. So before there was this snake charmer, heathen
Yeah.
culture
Mhm.
narrative that was there about
Cast
India,
cow
which
and
was
curry.
exactly, which was propagated by the British. So
Yeah.
then you would think that that would be gone by now,
Hmm.
but that has now been replaced by the Slumdog Millionaire
Oh.
kind of narrative, where
Okay.
everybody in India lives in a slum.
Yeah. It's essentially like that character from Munna Bhai MBBS. So there's this. I think it's the characters from China or something, and he's
Yeah.
wants to photograph like Indian people, and the
Poor
way he
people.
explains
Yeah.
it is, I want to see real India, poor India, and hungry people. I mean, that's what I'm getting as a sense, that people are looking for that as the true India in some ways, and it's not like they're to blame. See, uh, why I talk want to talk about this is that when we just talk about certain things, certain facts, certain news reports, then those are just facts. But what we see increasingly every single day, what we see today is more than just facts. We see that the way they are presented is more important. So you could be presenting the same thing or maybe a part of the same thing, but the way you present it makes the difference. And that's how narratives are built. Like you just mentioned, both of you mentioned that the way Narendra Modi is introduced is like the right wing leader of the country, Narendra Modi. And so people kind of get a sense that, okay, so this guy is good or bad, depending on what their own political leanings are. And like you said, like in Germany, right wing has this uh, ugly history behind it, and that's why it kind of sets the tone for the entire article. Or then if it is hammered repeatedly, then the same thing is understood by people. And I mean, again, with respect to the same thing, so whatever Indian government does with respect to any of this, like we have protests, and if we decide to clamp down, then we are bad. If we decide to not clamp down, we are still bad because we let it happen, and then all of these things. And this is why I'm interested in knowing how these narratives are set in different countries. I know my channel is small and not many people see it, but I consider this as like my own humble attempt in order to at least try to set the narrative straight. It has to be done, and it has to be done by people, because government is clearly failing at its messaging. I mean, I don't know what is the problem with this government, but they're somehow able to communicate with the people of India well enough, because if they're keeping winning elections, then they're doing something right in the communications department. But outside of India, they seem to be doing nothing at all, because all we see is now, again, yeah, and you see this because general people, what I get a sense is that people from other countries, they try to understand from whatever news they are fed, and the news that they are constantly fed comes from India, from a few left wing journalists, like that Barkhadat or Rana Ayub, they write for big, and they write for Washington Post, they write for New York Times, and these big media companies in the West. So obviously they are not going to give a balanced picture of anything. So they always give a skewed image of what India is. And people don't even bother to look beyond that. For example, even the right wing channels in, say, USA, the news agencies that they depend on for news in India are left wing news agencies. I mean, this is something that I was never.
NDTV.
NDTV, exactly. That, I mean, of all channels, they go for NDTV. And I mean, any self-respecting manager would just have one look at that Supreme Court judgment. I think it was a Supreme Court judgment where they lambasted Rana Ayub's book like left, right, and center, and no one would want to associate with that person anymore, because this is just lies. And they still want to hear from her about India. And of course, the vitriol she writes, we all are able to read. But what I don't understand is, how are we constantly failing to, at least project our narrative there? Do you see, I mean, anything, any alternative voices from India being heard outside?
No. I think there are a lot of things involved in this.
Hmm.
You mentioned one significant chunk is, of course, the media itself, because
Yeah.
you have to realize that what is the alternative to left wing media that these people can go to? What are the other sources? That is one big problem, that there are limit number of sources. And the other thing is that these sources, left wing sources, they are so well established, they are so well entrenched, they have such a good network,
Hmm.
uh, that it makes it, I think that is the first step, because this network is difficult to now build up for a different source. Like
True.
any non-left non-left media company is, which is there in India, which is trying to grow. I think to have their reach in the West, I think that itself they have to put in so much more effort. I think that's the first thing.
Correct.
The second thing, I think, which is also a problem, which I think a lot of people don't pay attention to, but which I realized only now in the background of the farmer riots
Mm-hmm.
is that the diaspora also has also has like a role to play. Not maybe
True.
as significant as media itself, but
Mm-hmm.
there is a small role to play. If you consider that the number of people who go out of India,
Mm-hmm.
all of these people are English speaking, well read, well educated people. And whom do these well read, well educated people read? They read Times of India, they read they watch NDTV, they read the scroll, the print, blah 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
So if you as a outsider, as a foreigner, speak to one of these diaspora Indians and tell them, oh, what do you think? And you have the same narrative reinforced that you're reading in the newspaper, then this is your idea of India.
Hmm.
But if only the somebody challenges this narrative, that's where you can even think about the possibility that there is something different.
Yeah.
Until and unless you go to India yourself and see an alternative.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to realize that not everybody can go to India and see how India really is.
Yeah.
And for most people's heads, I mean, for most people in the West, the idea of India, like I said, is still the slumdog millionaire, snake charmer, this thing. I mean, you won't believe. I was asked if I went to school by on elephants, or I don't know, did you walk to
Bullock cart.
school, or did you have school,
On a
or
bullock
bullock
cart,
cart?
they
I
had
mean,
asked. Yeah.
on the bullock cart, they asked me. And this is not like too long ago. I think it was in 2015 or 2016 where I was asked if I went to school on bullock cart, and I was like, "What are you talking about?" Like it's this is the problem because you as diaspora you are not here to perpetuate the belief of India that these people have. You are
Hmm.
there to uh, give a real idea of what India is. So when
Hmm.
I speak to people here,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and when they ask me something, like Karan gave the example of we've been here during UPA and when the whole Nirbhaya incident happened, and
Yeah.
one question that was constantly asked to me as a woman was like, "Oh, do you feel unsafe in India?" And I said, "No, I've never felt unsafe in that sense. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it and tell that we have no problems in India. Of course, there are huge problems in India. Rape is a problem. But I wouldn't say that rape doesn't exist anywhere else. You don't call America the rape capital of India. Nirbhaya
Of
was
the
a
world.
very brute of the
Hmm.
world. Yeah, I mean, Nirbhaya was very, very brutal. And it
Yeah.
has to be spoken about, and we will make a mistake as a society if we tell we don't have a problem. We do have a problem.
True.
But to make it out to be an Indian problem, I think
Hmm.
that is where then there is a mistake being made. And if you as the diaspora in different parts of the world, if when somebody comes and asks you, oh, is it really like this, and you say yes, how are you helping? Maybe you do think it is that way, I don't know. Like I definitely don't feel that way. I've grown up in Bangalore. I've never felt unsafe. Like I still go out at like 9, 10 in the night. I've never felt scared to go out in Bangalore alone. But
Mm-hmm.
I think this is something I've realized lately, especially because like Twitter has made me realize this. You
Yeah.
realize how many of these people who live abroad actually believe what comes in the scroll, the print, and what Rana Ayub says.
Yeah.
People will come and they will defend this, and our school system has a big role to play in this because
Yeah.
what have we studied in school? Like I studied. I didn't study anything about Cholas, Pandyas. I didn't study anything about the Indian history. To me, is the Mughals.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's everywhere.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you start with Delhi Sultanate, it comes to the British occupation, then you learn little about Gandhiji and history khatam.
Done. Yeah.
If this is what you study, if this is the kind of whitewashed stuff you study, why will you even think there is something else to it?
True. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just wanted to say that the people over here, I don't blame them because where do they have access to information from? They have newspaper
Correct.
reports or they watch documentaries. And
Yeah.
documentaries about India is mostly poverty porn. Uh,
Yes.
and it is like the easiest thing to make because you just find some poor person and show, oh my God, look at him, he's so poor. And it is like pulling on your emotional strings to like just get you to watch it. It's like I feel like the laziest form of documentary making.
Yeah.
Uh, so I don't blame the people here as such in the West. Yeah, of course they do have like a little white people, we are better, we have to save the unwashed brown masses tendency. and that is there across uh, everyone, like in the West. That is like
Yeah.
an ingrained thing. But yeah, I mean, it's like a bias that some people have, but I wouldn't hold it against them. Like our job is to like tell them what the real situation is. Like
Yeah.
people were so surprised when I told them, yeah, we are building highways. Like we have one of the largest network of railways in the world. They were
Hmm.
so surprised. They didn't even know about this. And they're like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. And like, do you guys go on trains like all piled up on the trains? I'm like, no, that is not how we do it in India. I mean, they have this very skewed view, and also the problem is it's not just the diaspora, like the mainstream media. For example, recently on Twitter, I think 2 days ago, a journalist they were discussing about India's response to the farm laws and
Hmm.
response to the protests. So this one journalist was arguing, saying that yeah, it may not have been passed in the most ideal democratic way, but India has shown restraint when it comes to the protests.
Okay.
And then this other journalist replies saying, what do you mean restraint? They have cut off water, they have cut internet, they have not given them any electricity. And I'm sitting here and wondering which other country in the world allows a group of people to come and block the major highway and in turn provides them water and toilets and electricity on the middle of the road.
In the
No
national
country
capital.
in the world, in the national capital, no country in the world would do it. I mean, I can't imagine people coming and blocking the autobahn over here
Hmm.
and then demanding the government to come and give them electricity over there so they can have their DJ nights. I mean, it is so ridiculous.
Yeah.
But
I
then
mean, you
this
saw
is the
an
kind of,
insurrection in New Delhi. You saw people like vandalizing your Red Fort. It's a
yeah,
national import. It's a building of national importance, and you let people do that, and still people are not able to believe that India has shown restraint in dealing with protests.
exactly. And still somehow we are authoritarian and fascist because we put up some extra barriers now on the road so that they can't repeat this again. I mean, I don't understand. And then again, the narrative is okay, you don't talk to the farmers, you are like authoritarian. They've had 11 rounds of talks. They are not ready. The farmers come in with a placard saying yes or no. They just
Hmm.
want yes or no. They are like completely opposed to any sort of discussion.
Hmm.
But then again, somehow the government is authoritarian. The government has offered to hold or stay the laws for the next 18 months.
Still.
And somehow, again, there was an article yesterday by a veteran saying that now the government has to, they have to bend over. We're being too rigid the government is being too rigid in its stance.
Yeah, yeah, I read that. I think he wrote in the article that I think I don't remember the exact words, but he meant something like that. After all of this drama, the government should be the bigger person and withdraw all the laws. I mean, like, in
Exactly.
what world does that make sense? I mean, first you try to pass these laws. I mean, okay, these laws are important, and not many people can, argue a good case that these laws should not be passed. And after that, people protest, and the protests are also handled very carefully. They're not beaten up or anything. They're led to, vandalize the Red Fort, and after that, you say that we bow down to them, accept their demands. What what was he thinking? I mean, it made me so sad because it was a veteran saying all of those things. I mean, it clearly shows that it's not strategic thinking of the, even of a basic level. It's like how you deal with a child. You don't give children what they want because they cry loudly about it.
Yeah.
You may be a bigger person, but that's not how you handle protests. I mean, I don't understand. And the problem is that these people, now this is what I think, okay, that because these people can write very well in English and they have some contacts, that is why they get to write their opinions in like large publications, and eventually these publications are what are considered as sources for people outside India, and that is where we make the fatal problem. We make the fatal error that we are not able to deal with this because too many people from our side are busy just outraging and not, actually contributing towards setting the narrative straight. I mean, you may probably
Yeah.
know that I keep pestering people that they should do something or the other. It is just because of this reason. And I think, I mean, who is going to, uh, you know suddenly grow a conscience on the other side and start saying no, we should do a balanced view of all of the things that keep happening, and we should report facts, and we should tell all of these things properly. No, it has to be done from the other side. And if we don't do
Yeah.
it, we as in the whole people who don't consider themselves as other than the left, if we don't do it, then who else is going to do it? I mean, yeah, please, Manasa. Yeah, you were saying something.
I just wanted to add something. Like media is one thing, right? I think one thing that the left has done really, really well is whether it's the protest now with the farmers or even CA.
Mm-hmm.
I remember seeing during the CA time these like posters which would come up like
Mm-hmm.
of why what is happening and why you should be with the protesters. The
Mm-hmm.
same thing is happening even with the farmers. There are these very chicly edited, nicely made 1 minute videos which is
Mm-hmm.
like farmers protest at a glance. This is the thing that the government wants to do. This is what the farmers want. So in like 1 minute, it makes you think that, oh, I know everything there is to know about it, and it is done in such a how do you say, in such a chic way that you are impressed, because when the presentation is nice and there is effort and money that has gone into it, and all this plays a significant role in convincing you about something.
True.
And this is something I came across yesterday in Twitter. There is a 3 minute video on farm laws
Mm-hmm.
with like these cartoons and stuff. I can share it with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
I think I've seen that, but I think I'll share the
Yeah.
link anyway in the description for this
yeah.
video. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think when you see that and then you see the stuff which like none of the things that they say in this video is true, but it
That
Yeah.
is
was
set.
absolute lies. The video
Yeah,
was just pure unadulterated lies, but done in like such a nice
Aesthetic
video
manner
that
that
you, yeah,
make it.
aesthetic manner that you watch in, and you watch it. And if you are someone who doesn't know the details of the laws, you would be convinced by it. You're like, okay, I know this. And then like you open Instagram or something, and then you see people sharing posts about what are the laws, why you should oppose these. And then you
Mm.
see this, and then you're like completely brainwashed, and you're like, okay, now I know everything about the laws, and the government is bad and the farmers are right. And like, for example, I'll give you a simple example about the lies they peddle. They keep saying 250 million people are protesting.
Oh yeah.
I mean, 250 million. Can you imagine? It is 1 in 5 people in India. So what, our economy has completely come to a standstill. There are 1 in 5 people are going and standing on the road over there. I mean, it is so ridiculous. But then people buy into these lies.
Yeah. I mean, because they're not able to identify now. So what I think is 1.35 billion is the total population of India. They think that it's possible that some 200 million people are just protesting. I think that's what this is.
Yeah. And yeah, sorry, go ahead. I lost my
no,
train of thought.
that's the problem with statistics, right? Because you can't imagine 50,000 people. There's no way you can imagine 250 million people. So it is believable. हाँ होंगे 250 million people. वैसे भी there are so many people in India. I think that also like makes such a big difference.
Yeah.
And one of the other thing is that the thing it's confirmation bias, right?
Yes.
It is like if you open your social media, whether it's on Twitter or whether it's on Instagram, you are
Mm-hmm.
bombarded with the kind of views that you anyway have.
Yeah.
So when you're seeing that being confirmed to you again and again, you every day get more and more convinced that हाँ ऐसा ही है.
True.
But if you then and then in like one, I don't know, like one in a million maybe, I don't know, somehow you manage to see the alternative to this narrative and you're like, this is not possible. Like
Mm-hmm.
everybody I know thinks this way, there is no chance this is true. Like that is anybody's response, and there's nothing wrong with it, but this is how people are. Even
Yeah.
I'm that way. If I see one of opinion which is contrary, I'm like, why? Not, no chance, everybody else is saying otherwise.
Yeah.
And you have to agree that everybody doesn't have the time to sit and read about the farmers law.
True.
Everybody
Yeah.
has lives to live. Nobody is going to sit and open the law and be like, ha kya hai bhai, let me see, let me inform myself.
Mm-hmm.
And there is no chance that these people who are going and standing in protest, we've seen that with CA also,
Mm-hmm.
nobody knew what the actual law is.
Yeah. Even they don't know. Correct.
Yeah, it's also sort of like peer pressure. Some of them
Hmm.
are like, and I think this was especially true during Black Lives Matter,
Yeah.
which said that if you are not protesting, you are the problem.
Yes. So they argue kind of this, that silence is complicity. I think that's
Yeah,
what they
Yeah.
call it. Yeah,
yeah.
it doesn't make sense.
And
So
when
the
it comes to India, oh sorry, I just wanted to add that if people wanted a different point of view or a perspective,
Hmm.
where do they turn to? What options are there? Because
Exactly.
look at how Vice, Brute, or Quint, or all of them make like these videos explaining the what is happening. And
Hmm.
then what do you have on the other side? On the other side, you have parody, or you have some memes, or you have sometimes like downright disgusting stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
There is no quality of discourse on the non-left side.
yeah, I mean,
I
it's
feel
it's
we
improving, I
seriously
think.
lack.
Mhm.
Yeah, slowly it is improving. There are like some podcasts coming. There are people who discuss these stuff on Twitter. Like
Hmm.
Swarajya is there, which
Yeah.
which writes pretty well. But how what is one Swarajya against the whole cabal
True.
uh,
That is true.
if you
of
take
the
into
English language media? I mean, it's so difficult.
Yeah, and we have to understand that this is not just the media. You see, like Hassan Minaj, they have Hassan Minaj, they have what's his name, John Oliver. Uh,
Hmm.
like I have had somebody I know put up a video of John Oliver and then tell, yeah, see what our government is doing, and I'm like, are you seriously telling me that your comedian is your source? And and I have also had people telling me, I know this to be true. I don't want to hear the government side because the government is lying,
Yeah.
or or telling me that I know what I'm talking about. I don't need to hear the other side. Like they are not even ready to discuss. Like that is the second point. Like even even if you manage to like put out, like even if we somehow manage to have an alternative to Hassan Minaj or to John Oliver or whoever,
Hmm.
will they listen? No. They're already
Exactly.
convinced by what they have seen, and they're like, I have had so many people I know
Hmm.
personally tell me that no, I don't want to hear this side.
Hmm. True. I mean, that is, I mean, that has to be taken into account, because one of the things is, what I try to do whenever I try to talk to people, okay, like genuinely talk to people, not Twitter talk to people, because that's just me having fun. But otherwise, you only try to argue with someone who you think can at least listen to the other perspective. If someone like has to, I mean, someone wants to live in an echo chamber, then it's their choice entirely, and then they may choose not to even listen to you. So that's okay. I understand that. But if someone is genuinely interested, at that point I try to, maybe put another side. It's not exactly trying to convince or something, but they have to have an open mind for that. So part of the effort with even my podcast, or some people who put out a lot of material. So there's a few magazines that have started. Swaraj is quite big even on the non-left side, but there are still a lot of few smaller magazines, smaller videos, those YouTube channels and all of those things, that they try to put out good enough content. But what I try to do is, you always try to convince the fence sitter or the onlooker. The person
Yeah.
on the other side is probably not even going to listen to you, and the more you try to keep convincing them, you're just losing your breath and wasting your time. What you try to do is, the next generation always has to be kept in mind. Now, what you mentioned about these small, I think Karan mentioned about these some company, some media portals that make short videos, 1 2 minute videos, that like Brute you mentioned, Quint, and all of those things. So there are, I saw this one infographic on the non-left. So it was very provocatively named. It was called a blithering idiot's guide to what the farm laws are, and I liked
Yeah.
it very much. It was like a few images, I think, and then they explained everything so well. It was just a yes or no, yes or no, yes or no series of yes or no things, and they explained it really well. What I think
Yeah.
should happen going forward, and people will do it obviously, is we try to encourage these people. Now I see that, I mean, those images, they've been carried by different media outlets, and now they're trying to talk about it in that manner.
Yeah.
So if we keep
Yeah.
doing that, then
So
it
that is
goes in
what
that
we need.
direction.
We need to produce more quality content. Like I think maybe this is a good segue into the next topic. Like you saw this document that was leaked by Greta Thunberg,
Oh
and
yes.
and like the links and the Google Drive and like all the documents they had. If you look at the quality of the slides they've made, how they've managed and how they've organized this whole thing, it's like someone from like a top MBA college has prepared this whole strategy of how
Yeah.
they want to protest and how they want to organize.
Hmm.
And I don't know if it is there or not, but I have personally not seen anything from the government side or from the non-left side, something of this quality.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they don't have anything, but okay, election time machinery, I don't think you can beat the BJP.
Yeah.
But like this type of communication, I would expect something like this from the government. I mean, come on,
Hmm.
we are a government of 1.3 billion people, governing 1.3 billion people. You should
Hmm.
have a proper, okay, yeah, the media and information ministry, the better not to talk about it, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm saying like, but the level of quality they have on the other side is not matched on the opposite side.
True.
And
True.
that is where we lose out a lot on this information war. Like you
Yeah.
said, now see, look at this blithering idiot's guide to the farm laws. It's
Hmm.
just what, 4, 5 slides, but see
Hmm.
the response it gets just because
Yeah.
of the quality of how it's made.
True. Short,
Yeah,
crisp, understood by everyone. And like you mentioned,
exactly.
some of these people, I don't know why a lot of people on the non-left have this tendency to look down upon humanities. I've never understood that. I mean, because humanities education is very, very important. I mean, if for nothing else, you just see how they name things. Okay, so what Greta Thunberg shared by mistake was a two. I mean, earlier it was understood as it by mistake, and then she shared it again, and whatever they called it the toolkit. If I didn't know any better, I would have called it a manifesto. It was a political document completely. They had a timeline, what to do, how to do, and whom to approach for all this messaging and all of those things. And then they roped the biggest possible, people who could be roped, and then they tried to do their messaging. And what they did was directly say that there are human rights violations against farmers. You see that they didn't say that the farm laws are bad. They're saying that there are human rights violations against the farmers. First of all, it's not true because no one is ready to talk about how 300, 400 policemen got injured. They don't have human rights apparently, but human rights of farmers were violated. Why? Because the internet was cut off. That is what the narrative is being built about. And what do you see as a response? Okay, the government of India did have a response. I don't know where it came from. If it came from Ministry of Information and Broadcast, otherwise known as Ministry of Propaganda, it's just a euphemism in my opinion. But if it came from there, then they did a shit job at that because what they did was they said India stands together. That's not
Yeah,
how you counter human rights violations allegations. And no, okay, so they got in some big names, they got some cricket players, they got some Bollywood people and all of that, and then they tried to, kind of say that India stands together and it's our internal matter and you don't comment on it and whatever. But beyond a point, you cannot control what other people talk about you. So your response should be with respect to what they're saying. But what you do, you give out a diplomatic answer to that. I don't know how else to mention this, but this is like a massive failure on the part of the government, and then it has to be done by private individuals, companies. Yeah.
yeah. The only plus point on this response from the government using the celebrities and India against propaganda is, I think, to show that how easy it is to just get all these big blue tick accounts to tweet whatever you want.
Yeah.
Like anyone would do it. Like you give them the right amount of money to their PR, they will tweet whatever you want. We know
Yeah.
this happened during the Kathua, the rape incident,
Hmm.
where all these Bollywood people were
The
holding these
placards.
placards and they were putting out tweets. And I mean, for it's so obvious to anyone that this is the same pattern that is repeating now with just Rihanna and Mia Khalifa or whoever. So one good, like, I appreciate the government in the fact that they gave them this back in their own medicine. But
Hmm.
and if you notice, they've now shifted the goalpost to human rights violations. They kept saying farm laws and all that, and now they've shifted it completely to now human rights violations because we've cut off internet.
Yeah.
So yeah, so the thing is, the government is still on the back foot because they are always reacting to the narrative being set by someone else.
Yeah.
And that is where they are still failing. Like now, first it was the farm laws. Now we realize, okay, after the insurrection, they realize, okay, maybe we cannot talk about that so much. Now we have to shift it slowly to human rights
Some.
violations. So now the
Hmm.
government is again playing catch up. And rather than focusing and saying that, see, our policemen got injured, 500 policemen got injured. That's what the Delhi commissioner confirmed.
Okay.
And there was one guy who died in the accident, one of
Yeah.
the protesters. Apart from that, the police have not fired a single bullet.
Yeah, I mean,
In
even
contrast,
that guy did not die with a bullet. They're saying that. I mean,
yeah,
what I've seen is that a few reports state that the guy died because his tractor got, caught up in an accident or something. It flipped and then he died beneath that. And some people are saying that
exactly.
there were bullets fired. Apparently, there's this person from Britain. I don't remember his name, but he's saying that at the very least, one or two bullets are fired at him, and there's no bullet holes in his body.
Yeah. And in contrast, there was recently, like exactly when this insurrection was going on, there was a huge crackdown on protesters in the Netherlands.
Oh.
And I think it was in Netherlands or Belgium. I think I'm confusing myself, but in one of those countries, there were
Mhm.
cops running around like dragging protesters and like clamping down on protests. None of this came in like any of the media, but somehow India's human rights violations and this one is like projected everywhere.
Yeah.
And then you should, I don't want to call them useful idiots, but because they aren't useful idiots. They know what they're doing.
Oh.
There are people in India who know what they're doing, and they do this deliberately to earn, I don't know what, some white people brownie points,
Hmm. You mean
that
the
they
people in the
sell
government?
this. No, not in the government, like in the media, who
Oh.
like
Oh.
the people who write for Washington Post, and they're like, आओ देखो India में, see, human rights violations are happening in India, please what shed a light on this. They write to the UN, and then like, okay, focus your this one on
Hmm.
human rights violations happening in India.
Hmm.
What was happening during the Black Lives Matter protests in the US? They were burning people's stores.
Yeah, they're
uh,
looting and burning and
in
all of those
yeah
things.
in Stuttgart, they were looting, and they were they damaged stores, and they were burning and looting. They also had, like I said, they had clampdown on protests recently now in Belgium or Netherlands. I'm not sure which country.
Mm-hmm.
And but all that doesn't come. We don't see anything from the UN on this. Even in Australia, I remember there was this video of a guard who choke slammed a guy onto the floor because he wasn't wearing a mask, and then lifted him with his shorts and threw him out of the store. Like
Wow.
a random security
Wow.
guard. It wasn't even a cop. Uh, there was no human rights violations and videos and stuff about all this. But
Yeah.
somehow, when it comes to India, it is this narrative being set.
I want to catch on to what Karan said.
Mm-hmm.
Government is always playing catch up. Like irrespective of what is happening, we are always playing catch up.
Mm.
This has started since the 2014 church attacks.
Yeah.
We've
So
been
Yeah.
playing catch up.
yeah.
I mean,
So
probably before that as well, but we're focusing more
Yeah,
on
probably before that,
after
but
that.
yeah,
Yeah. Sorry,
so
Manas.
when you're always on the back foot, you're always letting somebody else to set that agenda for you. So obviously you have some kind of difficulty trying to come up with something. I mean, come up with an explanation. And
Mm-hmm.
every time you catch up, these people already have moved on to the next one. I think that is one big problem. And the
Yeah.
second thing is when we are talking what Karan said, there are so many human rights violations that are going on.
Mm.
The latest, there is this huge report which has been released about Uyghur women being systematically raped in China. Don't hear anything about that.
China doesn't conduct any human rights violations. I mean, did you get the memo?
No, no, of course not. I mean, they are
the
perfect.
the difference is, I have to add that China has invested massively in its diplomacy. They have a
Propaganda.
they have a large number of diplomats, and they also invest heavily in foreign think tanks
Yeah.
to push their line of thought and their views. I I did this test recently, like I wouldn't call it a test, an experiment. Just
Mm-hmm.
search for debt trap diplomacy on Google.
Okay.
If you search for debt trap diplomacy on Google, you will
Mm-hmm.
the first page is filled with results saying why it is a hoax. So the thing is, they have manipulated. I don't know if they can manipulate Google search results. Probably they can,
Mm-hmm.
but they have made sure that there is enough content out there which called this a hoax by different news websites, they were like basically bombarding with information. Yeah, it is a sort of propaganda war. But
Yeah, could you just explain what the debt trap thing is and how, I mean, what China has exactly done? So,
yeah, so
just so,
basically it's a very layman's perspective, but debt trap diplomacy basically is China giving countries like Sri Lanka or the Maldives or Myanmar, they give them a loan to
mm,
develop a port or to develop some infrastructure.
mm,
And this is done at like very high, maybe not very high interest rates, but whatever they give them this money on a loan. And then when the countries cannot repay this loan back, they take over these infrastructure, this strategic
mm,
infrastructure. So this they've done in Myanmar, they were doing in Maldives. I think they've done it in Sri Lanka.
mm.
There was this one port that Sri Lanka couldn't pay back. And now slowly countries have started to realize that China is giving them offering them lines of credit and slowly like taking over their assets.
True.
And they're trapping them in debt. And this is like
Yeah.
a form of diplomacy, exerting
Yeah.
their power on this.
Mm,
Yeah. So now India was one of the first countries, and I think the only country to raise this in the international forum,
mm,
in fora, saying that this is what China is doing, and India refused to sign the RCEP. And India was the first one who publicly called out this Belt and Road Initiative for its
mm.
debt trap diplomacy. Now,
Yeah.
slowly, other countries have started joining the chorus.
Mm,
Uh, but like I said, I was searching for this the other day to find out to share it with someone. But the first page of Google results is only
how it's a hoax
articles
and it's
and
not
this
true.
one about why it is a hoax and why this is not what the reality is. But then you can see the reality now. Maldives has like shifted their this one to India. Now
Mm,
India is helping them build their infrastructure and
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Uh,
And you see
yeah.
a lot of
So
African countries also going through the same thing, right? I
yeah,
mean, there's a lot of countries in
exactly.
Africa that have taken loans from China, couldn't repay, and then, I mean, it's almost like you're handing over your piece of your sovereignty to them. I mean, and that's
Exactly.
how
So
we saw such a big example in Pakistan itself. So I think I don't remember which port exactly it is from in Pakistan, but I mean, there's
Gwadar
funding.
Port.
Yeah, was it Gwadar port that was being funded by China a lot, and then China I think is just taken it over or something. But there's
I don't
some
know if they've
investment
taken it
going on
over,
in
but yeah.
Pakistan as well. Yeah. So
Yeah, so they want to build this CPEC, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, and they want to build it all the way till Gwadar.
hmm
And it also, there's a problem that it goes through like part of Pakistan occupied
India.
Kashmir.
hmm
Yeah. Yeah, but so this is how China also sets its narratives by investing heavily in think tanks and universities in all these in international studies that happen in all these top universities. Like, look at the amount China funds top universities in the US, Harvard, Stanford, and like
Yeah.
and all the think tanks in the US. And they also have massive number of diplomats who push the agenda.
hmm
India, like we were lucky enough to meet the consul general from Munich when he had visited Stuttgart,
hmm
and he was speaking about how India is now starting to expand its Ministry of External Affairs and
hmm
starting to send more diplomats to. They want to increase the number of diplomats we have in different countries,
hmm
especially in Africa. As the main focus is what he mentioned.
hmm
So I feel this will be a very good initiative to like push the government's agenda. And I see like I follow him on Twitter and stuff, and I see that he keeps visiting industries here. He keeps visiting the local governments and politicians, and like keeps telling about what is happening in India, what are Atmanirbhar Bharat, this one. Like for example, Atmanirbhar Bharat. When I just small segue, not a segue on a tangent,
hmm
the government right from the beginning they've been saying it is not import substitution, we are not putting more tariffs, we want to trade with the world, we want to India to become self reliant.
Yeah.
But still this narrative is being pushed that we are putting up barriers like what China has with all their tech companies, that we
hmm
are going to erect barriers and not let anyone trade with us. And one good thing I see in this is that at least the Munich Consul General, he keeps going to all these companies and he's explaining to them what we mean by Atmanirbhar Bharat, and we want to trade and we want to do business with the German companies.
hmm
So I feel a lot more of this push has to come from the government,
True. Yeah.
and we cannot just allow like vested interests to keep writing articles on this.
Yeah, I mean, when you spoke about China, there's this one thing that we keep observing, at least those of us who are active on Twitter, that we see. Um, you remember when Indian soldiers and Chinese soldiers clashed on the border multiple times and all of that happened? And during that time, this Global Times is a newspaper in China. It's, I think, a state-owned newspaper or something. And they constantly kept issuing news articles and videos and saying how Chinese people treat, I mean, Chinese government treats their soldiers so well, how they are so well trained, and they have all of this equipment with them, they have all of these expertise with them, and then they keep like showing their trucks drifting and all of those things. I mean, I don't know if it's like a Fast and Furious version of China or something, but they keep issuing all of this kind of content in public. And when you see, I mean, first of all, whatever state-owned media that India has, I don't see doing any of this, because Global Times is a newspaper. It's not like their propaganda ministry. It's a newspaper. And what we have here in India is that we have this. I think ANI is the one that is state-owned, or is it not?
No, ANI is also just a news
Doordarshan.
agency.
Yeah,
Only
Doordarshan is the one
Doordarshan
state-owned.
is
Correct, correct.
Prasar
state-owned. Yeah,
Bharati, yeah.
Prasar
Prasar
Bharati, yeah,
Bharati.
and I mean, yeah, we don't even expect anything from Doordarshan at all. I mean, that's the kind of gap that we are dealing with. I mean, that's the communication gap between a country like China and some country like India. We're not able to match them. I mean, I don't know when we'll be able to do this, but I hope it's sometime soon, and I hope private players play a big role in this. I think Manas was saying something. I interrupted her.
I no, you didn't interrupt me. I just wanted to add that what you mentioned with the Galba, what happened with
Yeah.
China and Indian soldiers in Ladakh. If
Mhm.
you remember when COVID initially started and everybody was pointing fingers at Wuhan, they
Mhm.
very nicely shifted the narrative to this big hospital they were building in like
Oh,
what was there, like 2 weeks, and all
sure.
of a sudden there was no more talk about Wuhan. There was no more talk about the virus originating in China. There was only talk about, oh, look what China can do. Like
Yeah.
this is how they manage to like twist the narrative, uh, and this is what like the mistake we make is we are still playing catch up. We're like
Yeah.
तुमने ये कहा, we will try to counter that and then we will move on to that. Like I think that is where we slip up. Like we are
Yeah.
still trying to follow the path that these other people are setting for us.
Yeah, I mean, I just saw an article just today, I think, and the headline was so well named, and something like grit and patriotism and something of China helped them, beat the COVID virus. I mean, when China does it, it's patriotism and it's all well and good. But when India does it, it's militant nationalism, and that is what is dragging India down. And
Yeah.
again,
And China was locking up people literally. There were videos of them like locking the doors with these wooden metal things so that the people can't come out. And that was not human rights violations. But I remember reading some article about India where we had this strict lockdown where people were crying about, oh, how can you do this in a democracy? I mean, people, you can't lock people in their own houses and stuff. But like to the credit of the Indian people, I feel like we followed it also very, very well. The initial
hmm,
phases of the lockdown and even the unlock, like slowly in phases when we unlocked, by and large, the people did follow it.
yeah, I
So
mean,
we have to
that's one of
give
the
the
cases.
credit
Yeah, and
to, yeah,
I found the article. It's in New York Times, and again, I mean, New York Times is a big time guilty paper in talking trash about India, and they literally wrote. I'll just read out the headline to you: Power, patriotism, and 1.4 billion people. How China beat the virus and roared back. This is literally the article that I'm reading directly from the New York Times, and it's been authored by a bunch of I think there's one Chinese person as well as some American people over there. So that's the scale at which they are investing in all of these things. I mean, they invest in newspapers and they invest in universities and all of that. But I hope even India manages to at least set the record straight when it at least comes to India. Representing India at a global level is another circus. I think Arnab was initially attempting to do that, but I don't know how
yeah.
far it will go. But yeah, I hope we see something like that
I really had hopes
sometimes.
from Republic when he went independent that he
Mm,
would become like a BBC or a Al
mm,
Jazeera to
mm.
push like an Indian, more positive Indian agenda. But he has gone further down the Times Now debate hole that he was in.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay,
yeah,
I
Yeah,
it was his express purpose to be BBC of India. But
I
yeah,
think
it
I
was, but yeah.
I think I was more skeptical about Arnab than the two of you. Like
Yeah, yeah,
I didn't think he could change. Where I do have hopes is with Vion. Like some of their content
oh,
is really good.
yeah, yeah,
Especially I think Palki Sharma, she does a very good job when it comes to exposing China, and I she gets
yeah.
into constant tiffs with China on Twitter. I follow her, so I know that.
Hmm.
I think
Hmm.
if at all, Vion has a very good chance. They
Hmm.
also have some good people like Palki Sharma doing a good job. But I think what we need on that level is like we need better people. You both have spoken about it. You both said it. We need people who put out good content. It's not just
Hmm.
content. It has to be good content which is aesthetically pleasing, which can be marketed to everybody
Hmm.
else. And I think
Hmm.
that is still like the point where we lag behind everybody else. And if you think about it, the amount of soft power we have, like if you look at how China leverages its soft power, if you look, we have to leverage the same kind of soft power that we have. I mean, you
Yeah.
have yoga, and now
Hmm.
this chai latte whatever nonsense that the West
Yeah.
keeps calling it. Like there is so much that you can do with it. The only problem
Hmm.
is that again you are still going after what like people want to see. I think we have
Hmm.
to stop going after what people want to see, and we have to show them what we want to show.
Correct.
We've had too much of somebody else setting the narrative for us, and us trying to follow it or trying to debate against it. We've still not shown the world what India is about. Like even with what
Hmm.
Karan was saying about Atmanirbhar Bharat, it is happening now. Like these
Hmm.
individual consul generals are going now and talking to people, but it needs to be stepped up. This thing has to be put into
Hmm.
overdrive, this machinery telling what India is about. You can't just tell that aisa nahi hai. You have to tell what it is about.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, if I remember correctly, I think some was it Webster or Oxford? I don't remember, but some dictionary or yeah, dictionary they have declared Atmanirbhar as the word of the year. I mean, that's what we can actually make something happen. But I mean, whenever we do manage to do it, I think we'll do it quite well. I think I've run out of things that I wanted to discuss. So, I mean, if you guys have any particular thing in mind with respect to all of that we have discussed, then maybe
Yeah,
we
I
could
just
go
have
ahead with that.
one closing comment to say that to make sure that all this is possible, our
Mm-hmm.
country has to get rich. Like
Yes.
all this is possible only if we have money and economic might. No
Mm-hmm.
one will bother about what India is saying or doing if we are a poor country and we don't, like, for example, I know the automotive industry, so I'm just giving this as an example. The
Mm-hmm.
big companies over here, they do not even discuss India as a market, like the Daimlers, the BMWs. For them, India is a very small market. Yes, it always has a lot of potential, but it never discusses in any of their strategic thinking. Everything focuses on USA and China because they are the people who buy all of their cars. And in China, they sell probably 1 million cars. In India, it's like 10,000 units a year, which is absolutely nothing.
Nothing.
So for us to figure in international this one, for us to, if we want to become a Vishwa Guru, we have to become
Ah,
rich.
yeah.
Unless we become rich, no one will even want to listen to what we are saying.
Yeah. I mean, this Vishwaguru thing. I mean, it just it's a word that it's just something in my brain. I don't know what it is. I mean, we keep talking about it, but we are no. I mean, anyhow, whenever when we manage it, we'll do it. I mean, we'll see at that time. But yeah, I mean, what you're saying is right. And again, to Manasa's point as well, we have a lot of soft power that we should probably try to leverage to a larger extent. It's not that we don't do it, but it's not very active. But I see a little fault that some of us who just talk about this on social media, what we go through is that we don't focus on how yoga is an Indian thing and we should be proud and claim and all of this. What we focus on is how yoga is a Hindu thing. And then I mean what it does inadvertently is that it gives some people the chance to say that, oh, it's a Hindu thing, so if you do it, then you're a Hindu and you're not whatever you originally were, like a Christian or Muslim or whatever. But and unnecessarily gives way to a different discussion altogether. And then I mean the conversation goes haywire. What I think what we need to do is we need to avoid all of these traps, and we need to focus on what it would do to serve the interests of all of the people in India, not just like the little niche of people who really are invested in all of this. So this is one of those traps that we fall in, and if we are able to avoid all of these traps, then I think we're safe. But I mean, unless we keep talking about these things, I don't know if people will, realize that this particular thing is a trap and we have to avoid doing this. So this is just one example of the top of my head.
So
Yeah,
the
but I
yoga,
think sorry. I have a
sorry.
slight disagreement there probably when it comes to the yoga being a Hindu thing. I feel we should be unapologetic about it being a Hindu thing.
Yeah, I mean
Uh,
that's true. I mean we should be unapologetic. That's true. What I'm saying is that we get caught up in all of this. Sure, it's a Hindu thing. That's okay. But when you're trying to leverage it for your national interest, that is not your
yeah, but
first
then
point
that
that
is
you're thinking about, right?
exactly. But I feel that the government is doing pretty well. They have done it with this
Hmm.
International Day of Yoga,
Yoga.
where I feel that is a huge success, where they have this International Day of Yoga all over the place. Every country they do it. They have photos coming out, and if you remember, this was one of the things in the toolkit as well, where they
Ah,
specifically
Yoga
wanted to
and chai.
destroy this yoga and chai
yeah,
image.
venture.
So yeah, I would say that this yoga image is actually a success.
Hmm.
uh, but yeah, we should, in my opinion, we should be unapologetic about yoga being a Hindu thing, and unapologetic about the swastika also being a Hindu
Oh,
thing,
yeah,
and that
yeah,
also I feel we should reclaim from it from the Nazis.
yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted to like add on to Karan's closing remarks. I have one small thing to add. Yes, he's absolutely right. One of the most important things is we have to get rich. That's the only way China got the world's attention. The reason
Hmm.
China is so big today is not just because it's a manufacturing hub, but it's because it is a huge market for everybody. So I
Hmm.
think that is what we have to focus on in the next couple of decades. Get every Indian to be as rich as possible. The second thing I wanted to add, and I think this is something I have tweeted about even before, is that the government can do only so much.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, I feel whether it is the government or the BJP itself, they cannot be the last stand for anything. Whether it is Hinduism, whether it is for India, that can't be the case. We
Hmm.
as individuals also have a duty to India itself. And I feel that is where it is very, very important to how you come across and how you talk about your country. And I think that is a choice every day. It is possible to accept the faults that we have and tell that we are ready for reform, but at the same time to also show what we are good at. And I think that is something we don't do enough as people. We do have this sense of insecurity, inferiority when it comes to the West. We tend to agree with what the Westerners say, and I think that is very, very unfortunate. Yes, it has a lot to do with civilizational trauma and the colonization. It
Hmm.
is very, very hard to come out of, but I think there are a lot of people on Twitter, like you are there, Karan is there, and a lot of our friends on Twitter who do understand this. And
Hmm.
one part of this is when this thing is happening, like when we had Rihanna tweeting about it and when we had Greta tweeting about it. I think one thing we have to realize is when we start quote tweeting these people and when we start retweeting these people or replying to these people, what we're doing is giving them more engagement and giving them more a bigger platform and more audience.
Hmm.
And the second problem is that a lot of these replies and these quote tweets are so cringy. Like, why
Yeah.
do you get personal? Like, there is no need to get personal.
Yeah.
And I think it is very, very important for us to stay factual and to put our point across in a factual way. That is
Hmm.
possible. And the that is what as Indians what we can do for the country on
Yeah.
in a general sense. That
Mhm.
irrespective of, I mean, at the end of the day, whether you're right wing, left wing, pro BJP, anti BJP, I think at the end
Mhm.
of the day we are all Indians. We want India to do
Yes.
well. And irrespective of whether
Yeah.
you like Modi or don't like Modi, if he does badly, do you realize India is what suffers? I think that is what people
Exactly.
don't understand. And I
Mhm.
just wanted to uh, um, add that as my closing remarks. I think we all have a duty, and
Mm.
forget what anybody else does, do your duty.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I always keep saying this. That I mean, some people have irritated to no end, but I will keep saying this: that if you are good at some particular thing that you do, it doesn't have to be your technical expertise. It can be anything. If you like doing something on the side, so like I have a few people who are engineers by training, but they also like history. They like some other things to do. And then some people like, I think like you also, you're interested in Hinduism and what the origins of Hinduism are, or religious texts. You try to understand the religious texts better. So what we can do is, if you are good at that, then we can create content of our own. I keep saying to people that if you're good at something, then write about it, create some kind of content about it. You cannot afford any more, but you can't just do that anymore. You have to write, you have to speak about it, and total amount of content itself goes up, then naturally we'll have good content also going up. Because it's not like you can just target that, okay, we only want good content and nothing else, but it doesn't work that way. If it is crowdsourced, you'll have all sorts of content, but then that is the only way you can ensure that good content goes up. So that is why I keep saying this to everyone: if you are good at it, then write about it, then talk about it, you know make your own podcast or whatever, and just keep talking about things that you know. If you're good at economics, write about that. If you're good at foreign, analyzing foreign policy, to talk about that. If you're good at, a lot of people, what we don't realize is that tech journalism is also very important. Of course, tech keeps on going in India. If you visit the bigger universities and the bigger institutes, there's a lot of research going on. All the IITs, all the NITs and BITS colleges and all of them, they did IISc, they have a lot of superb research going on, and they target market problems as well. But what happens sometimes is that the science section in all of our newspapers is not, or even media channels and everything, it's not very good. It's not aesthetic,
We
it's not
have,
good at communicating. You were saying something?
yeah, I was just saying that we have health reporters who have no idea about anything. Like same way we have tech reporters who have no idea about the tech. So
Yeah.
yeah, that is very unfortunate. But
Yeah.
yeah, sorry.
Yeah, we have historians who don't know anything about history. I mean, it's bad to speak about people who died, but DN Jha recently died, I think yesterday. And we all know about what his, we all, as in you, me, and Manasa, know about what his role was in the whole Ram Janmabhoomi case. But if people are, if people are just aware that these people have done nothing but malign some of your own, history, and they've not let the proper history percolate down to you, and they fed you lies, then naturally there'll be a lot of other people who will try to go and search for the right thing. There are a few people who still do it, but if more of us do it, then there's this larger content that we can analyze. Recently, this is a small thing I'll say. Recently, I got wind of this one particular podcast. It's called Maratha History on YouTube. I don't know why I didn't know about it previously. Okay, so apparently those people are so good, because I've watched a lot of their videos since I came to know about them. So there's a lot of videos that they have, a lot of content that they have, and they're by profession. I don't think any of them are historians by profession. They're techies, or they do other things, and they just do this as their interest. But what we realize, and then there's some videos of some other historians that they've published on their channel. What we realize is that there's a lot of correspondence that went on between Marathas and other people and all of that, and a lot of that is lying in some research centers in Pune and Mumbai. It's just that the only people accessing those records are lawyers. And you know why? They are accessing those records because there is some person or some people who claim that they are descendants of this historical personality, and they are demanding royalty on something. And that's why they want to look for proof, which is why they're going through all those records. But imagine if we had like 100 trained historians who would just be doing that, then we would not
Yeah.
have to rely on what Audrey Trushka says about Marathas with respect to Aurangzeb. We would have like an army of 100 people talking about what Marathas thought. So the more people we have, the more content we'll have, and naturally the number of the good content will also go up. So all I want people to do is conduct their own research, do something, and keep talking about it. That's what I would like to end this on. I think this is the longest podcast conversation I've done till now. It's like almost an hour and 50 minutes. Is there anything else you would like to say, Karan? I think you were saying something.
No, I was just saying that you don't even have to be good at it. You can keep doing, and practice makes perfect. So you
Yeah.
can, like, okay, if you want to write about economics, you can write about stuff that you know.
Mm-hmm.
And naturally, when you write about something, you will do some research, and that is how you can also get better at it. So
Yeah.
you could it is also like, yeah, like you said, we need more content, we need
Hmm.
more people doing it, and it doesn't even have to be good in the beginning. Like even if you look at any of those top tech YouTubers or any YouTubers, you see their old videos, it was trash. But
Yeah.
then slowly over time, they get better at it, and
Yeah.
then the quality improves.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
True. Yeah, I think I'll close this conversation today. So, guys, I had a lot of fun talking to you, uh, and hope we'll be able to have more such conversations. And we'll be able to talk about other things as well, not just like a perspective that you guys can give regarding India outside, but hopefully it'll be more issue based and issue centric in the future. So
yeah,
thank you. And if in case other people want to follow, the viewers want to follow Karan or Manasa, you can find both of them on Twitter. I'll leave their handles in the description. And please make sure you also follow Manasa's podcast. It's called Mimamsa on YouTube. So thank you. Namaste.
thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for